Leyanis, thank you so much for being here. Founder of Major, a company who's focused on helping small businesses in a lot of different ways. Mm-hmm. But before we get to that, I'm pretty passionate about my coffee order. We talked about it a little bit before. What's your go-to coffee order, or whatever fuels you for the day?
Yeah, so so funny enough, I am Cuban. That's my background. I'm not a big coffee drinker, which every time I tell someone like I'm Cuban, don't drink coffee, people are always like, are you actually Cuban, right? I'm a tea person. I love tea. So
really?
Every morning I start my day with some green tea, and that's like more than enough to kind of fuel me throughout the day.
Very nice. Very nice. No, my wife's a big green tea person too.
I love tea.
And I like tea like after a meal. I will say that much. Especially if it's like a little too full, you have to green tea. It makes
it's nice.
Tells you but fuel, no. I don't know. It doesn't fuel me. But because of my Cuban nature, I drank coffee to go to sleep.
Well, I only like café con leche with like 5 spoonfuls of sugar. So like at that point, it's not even coffee anymore. It's just candy.
Yes.
So I try to stay away from that.
Well, that is one of the magic things about Cuban coffee that the rest of the world doesn't understand. It's like, yes, it's you get the buzz from the sugar just as much as you do from the caffeine.
It's more the sugar.
My brother used to take the bottle, like a tete, and he would do it at the bottom with all the sugar and then stick it in the kid's mouth. So.
Oh, gosh.
It's Miami life.
They were bouncing off the walls, yeah.
Well, his wife, had to put up with it. My sister-in-law is a saint. So, in your content, you share a lot about how your family's entrepreneurial journey really inspired you. So, like, how do you translate that into your work today, especially being Afro-Latina? Mm-hmm. How do you take that your family has given you and then pour that into your business and into other businesses?
Yeah, so I come from, a family of like side hustlers, right? My dad does some things on the side and has done that for a really long time to put food on the table outside of having a full-time job. And, my grandma's also really entrepreneurial too. Like for as long as I can remember, she's like cooked and done that as a profession. And then she's also, done like alterations and like that kind of thing. And so, I kind of realized that, I come from this family of side hustlers, but nobody really turned that into this like thriving, like small business. Just really speaking to my family, I realized that there's reasons for that, right? They didn't really know what they were doing. They became entrepreneurs out of necessity, which I feel like happens, oftentimes with a lot of people, right? Like they're just trying to put food on the table. They don't really care about, profit margins or whatever else. It's really, they don't really care about the complexity. It's really just about, okay, I need to do
Putting food on the table this week.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, it's not really about all of the business concepts, but then, as I just saw their experience, the fact that I'm like, okay, you're really good at what you do, right? Like you could have scaled this, right? Like what are those barriers? What are those challenges? I realized that it's, they didn't really know what resources were out there. They didn't really know, that they could have expanded this, right? They didn't really see like the representation from someone else, coming to them and saying, hey, like you could, grow this, like here's some support to do that. So, seeing their experience and then also just kind of, I am Cuban. I was born in Cuba. I grew up in Miami. I have lived in a lot of Miami, neighborhoods, and a lot of the neighborhoods that I grew up in were impoverished, right? And so I saw a lot of my favorite small businesses over time also go out of business, and it's because they weren't able to get that support. So I think, that experience, seeing small businesses go out of business, and coupled with, the fact that my parents, my family were immigrants, they didn't understand the system, they didn't speak the language, they didn't understand what resources were out there for them. Like that for me has really been the driving force to, one, I love business, right? Like this is my trade, this is my passion, this is what I love. But I'm also really passionate about, again, like I mentioned earlier, it's about really making it accessible, making it simple, so that even if you're just doing this out of necessity so that you can put food on the table, like you understand that, there is something here, or there could be something there if you wanted to grow it, right? If you wanted to do this full time instead of doing this and a full-time job or whatever else, that's an option.